Everybody, Lieutenant Joe here for Hope is Not a Tactic, the School Safety and Security Show. So, this will be part two of a series that we started very recently on pre employment background investigations. Now, we see how important this is, especially for people who work in our schools. The impetus for this, for those who didn't see episode one yet, you should go back and watch it. There was a school teacher, an active duty K through 12 school teacher, young man who had worked in multiple districts, and he was hiking in Arkansas, and he came across a man and a woman and their two little girls, and he murdered the man and woman. And people were shocked because he worked with little kids. So did he see the little girls? Did he want to target the parents to get the girls? The mother had this foresight when he started attacking to hide the little girls, to run away with them and hide them. Then she came back to help her husband, and he killed both of them. Were they the target? Would he have abused people, children in his classroom? Would he have been a predator down the road? We don't know that, but the reality is that's everyone's concern, and that's where I wrote an article about pre-employment background investigations. They have got to be more than just the application stuff that's in there. Who are your three favorite people that are going to tell us about you? Oh, he's a great guy, right? Of course. What are they going to say, right? So in our first episode, we started covering some of the basics about why we do this. As we go through this, like I said, I told everybody I have this program that I wrote. I teach this, right? I teach pre-employment background investigations for all kinds of uh, places that have important duties to protect and serve children and other people, law enforcement, schools, summer camps, how to identify good, decent people and bring them on board so that we don't have a problem a year, 2, 3, 4 years down the road with this person. So that's our premise. So here in part two, what I've documented here is what areas do we look at? Right? What's an application tell us? What's your previous history? We run a criminal history. Oh, a person's never been arrested. Does that mean that they won't go to a state park and murder two people? They just haven't done it yet. We all know there's inappropriate relationships by male and females with their students. We see that more and more. And what do we do? How do we uncover that kind of thing? Well, all of this kind of thing is uncovered in our personality traits, in our history, in the things that we do, and there's things that we need to look at. So in my program, under the topic called Areas of Concern, and anybody who wants this, I will send it to you, right? You email me, joe@pangarotraining.com, and I will send you the program, right? I'm probably going to do a live stream like this and teach the program coming up soon. All right, but first, let's thank our sponsors again. Blue 360 Media, RiotTint.com. They make glazing for your windows in your schools. Awesome stuff. MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com in New Jersey. If you're a state worker or county worker, township worker, you can get a health screening, no cost to you, could save your life. And our newest sponsor here, Dubby Energy Drinks, Dubby.gg. And if you go, I'll put all this in the links where you can find different articles and things. So make sure you look at that. Like, subscribe, and tell your school friends about this. This is important. No matter what you do in the school, everyone should understand these things. All right, so we're going to talk today about what I say is moral character. All right, one of the things we have to look at. Moral character. Well, what does that mean? What does that moral character mean? Well, when I look at these topics, and because of the lighting in the studio, and I'm letting you in on all the behind the scenes kind of things here, is I have to turn on a little light here so I can see this. All right, so we talk about integrity and honesty. These are the topics. Impartiality, trustworthiness, protection of confidential information. Don't we deal with that in schools? Right, of course. Moral and ethical behavior. Right? Impulse control. Okay, how important is that? Attention to safety. Attention to safety practices. Substance abuse. Risk-taking behaviors. And believe it or not, somebody's driving history can tell us a lot about them. Now, I mentioned this in episode one, and why that's important, because when you're in your car by yourself driving around, that's who you really are. Just like on social media, right? Most people go on social media and they have all kinds of, they're on different platforms and they voice things and say things. They belong to different groups. They like certain things, right? All of these areas are things we need to look at and make sure that we understand who these people are that want to come into our schools, into our agencies, and all those kind of things. So when we look for this stuff, it's important. All right, so integrity and honesty. One of the things that I suggest is that you get a binder. And in that binder, you take all of these topics and you come up with questions in advance, right? So, what would I ask about honesty? So, you might say something like, tell me about a time that you had to be honest about something that you were reluctant to do so. Now, that sounds like a hard question, right? Who wants to admit that? But can't we all come up with something? I was there with time. Maybe I had to tell somebody something negative about them or about their behavior, or I had to discipline somebody. And I didn't, I didn't want to hurt their feelings. I didn't want to say, so was I honest with them? Yes, I was honest with them. But at the same time, um, it's difficult. So that might be an answer to your question. Integrity. When is sometime you were involved with something? Could it be a sports coach? Could it have been in your private life? Could it have been at something in school? Anything like that. When were you involved with something like that where your integrity was called into question? Did you ever have to make a choice between what you are supposed to do and what you want to do? Right. And you see that this gets more in depth. This is not just a, hi, how are you? Do you want to work in the school? Oh, you like children? Oh, that's good. No, we have to go in depth into people's personalities. Trustworthiness. Tell me about a time that you were entrusted with something and how did it work out? What did you do to ensure that you did the right thing? So that's the idea. As we go through these, you'll see them. Um, Moral and ethical behavior. Now, I have a whole program on morals and ethics. I'm going to do it in a series just like this too. It'll probably be 2 or 3 episodes. But morals and ethics. And we say, well, whose morals? Whose ethics? Well, there are some universal morals and ethics that we all follow, no matter what community we're from, no matter what our background is. There are some things that are important. So you might want to come up with a series of questions about somebody's morality, and I don't mean, too personal of a things, but how do they believe about this? You might have a question like, if you knew another teacher was having a problem with alcohol, would you talk to that teacher or would you come forward? Would it make a difference why you would come forward to the administration? If the person was coming intoxicated every day, is that what you would use as your guide to come forward and say, I think Jane or Bob has got a little drinking problem. They smelled like alcohol this morning. I saw them stumbling, bumbling around. Is that when you would come forward? Why wouldn't you come forward sooner? And how we gauge their answers is about how honest they are about it. Have they ever thought about these things before? Right. So you see, as it gets deeper and deeper, it's important. So I have a book you can see over here, The Interview. Right. That's a book that I wrote. Blue 360 Media is the publisher. I wrote this book for law enforcement officers to do criminal interviews, but the processes and the thinking is really the same in any kind of a probing interview. So I strongly suggest you go to blue360media.com and you get the book. It's not expensive, but it explains and helps you to understand what goes on in somebody's head when you're asking them questions, when you're interviewing them, when you're trying to gauge their body language based on an answer, right? So all of these things are important. All right. Moral and ethical impulse control. Now, we think about impulse control. Don't we have a problem with the kids in the classrooms that have impulse control issues? Right? These kids are sent out for maybe some kind of counseling so they can get themselves under control. Some children are put on medication, right? They have ADHD, they can't control themselves, they lash out, all those kind of things. So isn't that important in an employee? So you might want to know that. Now, that might come under once an offer of employment is made, when you can ask medical questions, that might be the time to say, hey, have you ever had an ADHD problem? Have you ever been on medication for this, that, or the other thing? Do you think you have an impulse control problem? Tell me about a time that you were in traffic and got cut off. How did you deal with that, right? See, so these things all kind of go together. All right. Some other areas. Moral character, very important. And I go through it in detail in the program. So you might want to read that. I'm actually going to turn it into a book. All right. How about handling stress and adversity? Our world today is filled with tons of stress and adversity. Our schools are filled with stress and adversity. What happens when you have someone in your school that has beliefs that are different than your community standards? All right, what do I mean by that? Well, we know there's a lot of controversies now about how to handle children as they start to understand who they are and where do they fit into the world. Well, do you have a teacher that believes one extreme or another and will push their own opinions on the children? What if it's different than your community's standard? Right? Don't you want to kind of know those things in advance? So you might want to come up with a couple of questions about belief systems. You know, if you believed one thing, but you're in an organization that believes another, how would you reconcile that? Would you deal with it? And listen to the answers, right? The words mean things when people say things. Right? Stress tolerance. Tell me about a time you had a very stressful situation. And it doesn't matter what the situation is. It could be a personal thing they had to go through. It could have been a loss. It could have been a job decision, a mortgage, getting divorced, whatever. The question is, tell me when you had a stressful situation. How did it affect you? And how did you deal with it? What was your thought process when going through it? You see, so you start to see, wow, when they have a stressful situation in the school or in the classroom or a problem with a student or a parent, how are they going to work their way through that? Um, Positive attitude and an even temper. Isn't that what we want? Do we want people who are down and they're depressed and they're quiet and they have no energy? Or do we want somebody who's just bouncing off the walls constantly? Whoa, whoa. We want somebody that's even tempered with a positive attitude. They're going to be around children, right? They're going to deal with children who are having problems, who need a positive influence. My daughter-in-law just became a teacher, and she is a wonderful young woman, and she's teaching the young ones pre-K. And one of the things, you know, the whole family's getting on, congratulating her on her first day starting. And I said to her something that came to me right off the bat. How many teachers in our lives have made such an impact that they changed our lives? Well, teachers can do that. That's one of the beauties and the powers of being a teacher, is that they can change your life. I've had teachers that to this day, after 40 something years since high school, there were some teachers that changed my life just by the things that they said and how they dealt with life when we talked about whatever. Right. So these are important things. How do you ask that? Tell me about a time you had a difficulty and you felt really down in the dumps. How did you get out of it? So you see, having this binder with all these questions in it, when you go into the interview, you're not trying to off the top of your head come up with stuff. You got all these questions and go through each one of these topics. And if different people are doing this, they're getting different opinions on the answers. So maybe you have two people in the interview or three, or you have a board, and everyone can then talk about, well, what did I see? What did I think? What feeling did I get off the person? And understanding body language and how people respond, their true responses, is very important. That's why the interview book is so important to you. All right. Obstacles and adversity, accepting responsibilities for mistakes. Now, this one you say, well, what mistakes would they make? Okay, well, everybody can make mistakes in their career. We know that teachers are with these children all day long, and I've seen them. When I worked in the school district, I saw how much these teachers love these children. For the most part, they love these kids. They want to do what's right by them. And therefore, kids will bring things to teachers that they may not bring to their friends. They might bring it to the teacher and say, "Well, this is going on." How many times do we say that there's mandatory reporting? You have to come forward when a child tells you something about abuse or whatever. And I've seen these teachers handle it well, and I've seen them handle it poorly. Okay, so we want to make sure that we might ask questions about that. So a quick example: my son, when he was in fifth grade or sixth grade, he witnessed bullying. There was a little boy in the classroom that was bullied by a lot of the kids, and he witnessed it and it bothered him. And he was a strong kid, my son, and he was bigger, so he didn't get picked on. But him and his friend decided to befriend this boy who was picked on, and he actually reported some of the bullying. And that got back to the bullying specialist. Now, this is like every other profession. Sometimes people are great at what they do, sometimes they're not. This bullying specialist came into the classroom and admonished all the children, saying that little Frankie over there is getting bullied by some of you, and Jack over here told me that you're bullying him. Jack, stand up. And she pointed him out. She basically put him in, and when she was done, she called Jack out in the hallway and said, listen, if you have a problem next time, don't be going to the principal or the superintendent like he did. You come to me. I'm the bullying specialist. Did that have any value? No. So we want to make sure who do we have in our schools? All right. I don't want to make this a forever episode, but I'm going to keep going on. How about work habits? Is a person's work habits important? All right. So let's see. What would you look at? Conscientiousness, dependability, reliability. Three things we want in our teachers, don't we? So you might ask a question. Could you tell me about a project you had one time? Did you work on a team or you worked by yourself? Did you meet all your deadlines? If you didn't, why didn't you? What obstacles did you find? What did you learn from the process? So I have tons of questions for all of these things. Safeguarding and maintaining property and equipment, right? Aren't school dollars at a premium, right? Aren't many of our districts asking parents to bring in school supplies because we just don't have the money? Well, how does somebody handle equipment, right? And depending on their job, they may be utilizing important equipment. Do they understand how to take care of equipment? It sounds like a silly thing, but I would ask questions about it. Absolutely. And then the last one we'll talk about for now, interactions with others. What is somebody's interpersonal skills? So questions that you could ask there. Could you tell me about a time you had to work with someone you didn't like? Could you tell me about a time you had a supervisor that you didn't get along with? Can you tell me about a time you worked with somebody that you loved working with them? How did that work out? Right. So we look at all sides of the question, good, bad, and indifferent, to get all these different opinions. And not only that, they're talking, right? And the more people talk, excuse me, when you get to book the interview, you find out you want to make people not nervous. You want them to calm down and interact with you during the interview and to get to their real answer. So by asking these things is important. How about social sensitivity? Right? Do the people we're going to hire, have they grown up only in one kind of a community and they don't know really a lot about other communities? But the school district they're working in might have a very diverse community. Do they understand how to listen and not judge somebody's situation based on only their own lifestyle? So what's important is in law enforcement. When I became a detective, I was working with all the other detectives. We had 10 adult detectives that handled adult crimes, major crimes, and then we had 4 detectives that handled juvenile incidents. And sometimes you'd work together. You'd have a case, they need a second detective, you go with them. So my friend Kevin, who was an amazing detective and an amazing juvenile detective, he said to me, he grew up in a middle-class traditional home. Mom stayed home, dad went to work, lots of kids. He says, we had a beautiful home, lots of food, lots of clothes. We never wanted for anything. You know, we had a normal life, went to church. He goes, when I came here and started working with different children, I found that I was judging these families based on only my experience. My experience is the only way to do things. And he realized over time, no, just because someone's in a different socioeconomic group than you were, doesn't mean they're bad people. They have a different circumstance. You have to understand their circumstance. Just because people are from a different race or religion or culture doesn't mean it's bad. Just means you don't understand it. So don't we want to find out people who have the ability to be socially sensitive, to learn and open their minds to things? Do you see how important all of these factors are? And just in this one, there's even more. How can they be? Do they have social interest and concern? Are they just one-sided, or are they trying to look at both sides of an argument and provide good input for the students? So we have many more episodes of this, and I appreciate you all being here. I don't want these to be too long because that's what I hear. 15 minutes is enough, Lieutenant Joe. So I want to thank you all for being here. Remember our sponsors, RiotTint.com, Blue 360 Media, W Energy Drinks, and medicalessentialdiagnostics.com, right? We're all in this together. We have to take care of our kids and help the world to be a safer place. So this is episode 2. We'll see you soon for episode 3. And hopefully we hire the best of the best and our schools are awesome.